Hello, lovely people. Welcome to episode 2 of Off Script with Emma. Now, if you listen to the first episode, you would know that this episode is all about why I left teaching. Bit more of a deep dive. And for some, might be a little bit controversial, might piss you off, but that's okay because everybody is entitled to their opinion. Everybody has their view of the world, and everybody has the beliefs that they have. Now, when I look back on why I left teaching, what I've learned in the last year through remote sales, I have a really different view of how things were going. Now, at the time, I was burnt out, I was frustrated, I had all of these reasons why I was not enjoying what I was doing. But the lens that I have now, a little bit different. I'm going to tap into that after I go through really the main reasons why I left. Now, I did talk about this a little bit in the first episode, but basically, 3 main reasons why I left. Number 1, I was burnt out. A lot of people could probably resonate with that. You might not be a teacher, but you might be in a job where you're feeling burnt out. The other reason is that my belief is that schools are no longer designed for the generations coming through. They're not suitable and they're not changing anytime soon. And the third reason that kind of taps into a little bit into reason 2 is that schools and the schools I was working in, and even some of the private sectors, they're governed by policy through the government. Okay. And what that means is politics. So there's a lot of politics in school. Nothing is as simple as you would like it to be. And there's a lot of red tape. So 3 main reasons. Now, let's get into the burnout. Okay. Now, when I say burnout, I was putting in too much. I gave too much of myself. And when I look back now, I realized that I didn't have enough boundaries set. I thought that if I worked and worked and worked and worked, I would eventually catch up and I would complete my to-do list and I would feel more content. I would feel happy. I would feel like I had been successful. But that wasn't the case. And any teacher or anyone who is working ridiculous hours over what they should be doing knows that feeling, because you do it because you think you're going to feel like you're ahead and you're on top of things, and then you can relax. You do it because you put a high expectation on yourself to deliver above and beyond, which what I thought back then was me doing an amazing job, doing what I should be doing. I've just realized, or I have realized lately, that that was me just living up to what I thought other people wanted to see. I needed to live up to this Emma, this version that people knew of me, which was that I was successful, I was confident, I was great at things, I was a leader, and I got shit done. But it was to my own detriment. And so I would do ridiculous hours. My routine was so rigid. I would get up at 4 o'clock every morning and I'd go to the gym. Go to the gym at 5. I would take everything with me. I would take stuff for a shower at the gym. I'd take my breakfast. I'd take all my lunch, all prepped and everything. And I would typically get to work around, so I'd go 5 to 6 the gym. I'd typically be out at work a bit after 7. Now, mind you, I used to have to travel an hour to work. An hour. Even to the point that when I was on my way to work, I used to listen to recordings of my kids reading. Like the kid, because I used to teach year 1, year 2. So it was all about reading. And I used to listen to recordings of them reading while I was driving because I had a spare hour. So why would I not use that time to see how they were going with their reading? I think back now, wild. So I would drive to work. I'd get there about 7. And then I was one of those people who, one, I didn't want to get stuck in traffic. Where I used to work, there used to be a section where if you didn't leave by a certain time, you were screwed. So I would wait until 5:30, 6 o'clock, sometimes even 7 to leave. So I was doing massive days. I'd been up since 4. I wasn't getting home till 7, 8 o'clock at night because I lived an hour away. And then I would basically come home. I would sit on the lounge, eat my dinner in front of the TV, and I would doom scroll. I was numbing myself because of how tired and burnt out I was, but I was doing it to myself. No one was making me be there until 6, 7 o'clock at night. No one was saying, Emma, you need to be doing this, or you have these things, there's deadlines. And so I did that to myself for a really long time. And if you're someone who is doing that, you know how it feels. For me, it was like, okay, well, if I stay back and I do the things that I need to do ready for tomorrow, that when I come in tomorrow, I'll feel better. And look, some of the times, yes, it was about setting up for the next day, or it was about doing something that was going to take the load off later down in the week. But at the end of the day, I was doing this regularly. And this is what caused me to basically burn out. So I was doing these really long hours. I was putting so much into teaching during the week, and then even on the weekends as well. I would spend my Sunday nights, because Dylan would drive back. He used to work away, so he would drive back of a Sunday afternoon, and I would sit and I would do schoolwork. And that was my life, 6 days a week, sometimes even 7. If it was reports, teachers, if you're listening to this and you are going through reports, or you've just gone through reports, I see you. I see you. If it was reporting times, goodbye weekends. That was never any time there. So I was just exhausted. And to be honest, the feeling or the excitement about my job or what I was getting in return just got to a point where it just wasn't exciting anymore. It wasn't really fun anymore. I loved the idea of leading teachers. I really did. I really loved working with the team that I had, leading the stage in what we were doing in regards to curriculum and leading behavior initiatives and things as part of teams in the school. I loved all that sort of stuff. But I was also teaching at the same time. Now, depending on where you are located, if you understand the education system, okay, basically my role as a middle leader was to go between the principal and teachers. So I would run a stage of teachers. Now, at one point, I was managing a stage of 7 classes and then including my own, which was 8. So I had 8 classes in the team that I was managing. Now, typically the way that schools are funded, you don't have your executive leaders off class. So what I mean by that is that if you are leading a stage, you're typically teaching as well. So you're basically doing a dual role. So you're teaching, but then you're also having to lead, which comes with its own responsibilities. Now, this kind of moves into another reason about what really frustrates me about the systems is that when it comes to middle leaders, a lot of them are on class. Now, some schools are really blessed depending on how they move their funding around and how they allocate things. They are able to have their executive people off class, but most of the people I know, most of the schools I worked in, your middle leaders were in the classroom. So I found it really hard to do both. I loved leadership. I loved the idea of doing that and continuing that, but trying to juggle that alongside teaching a class, it just got way too much. So that was basically the burnout side of things. Now, moving into the second reason that I left, which, like I said, a little bit controversial. You can agree, you can disagree, that's fine. But the way that I think schools need to be designed, the way that I think we need to set them up for the next generation, it's just not there. Now, I'm not saying I have all the answers. I really don't. I really don't know how we can make changes that make sense to allow for our kids coming through. But the amount of times that I hear people say to me, particularly my parents' generation, oh, when we were in school, we just sat down, we were quiet, we did what we needed to do, we copied off the board, it was chalk and blah, blah, blah. I knew how to sit still. Kids these days can't sit still. The amount of times I hear this from people, it's quite regular. And sometimes even from people in my generation, okay? Now, coming from that generation of like, we used to sit down and I remember there was chalkboard. It was like chalk and a board. We rarely use laptops. We used to go into like the AV room to watch a movie. That was like the best thing ever. If you were ever in school and the teachers were like, Friday afternoon movie, oh my God, it was honestly the best thing ever. But back then was a different world, right? Back then, we did not have the technology that is available these days. We were in a totally different era. And so, school set up the way that it is and was back then was probably easier for kids to just kind of go along with things that were happening. We were, and our parents' generation were a lot more attuned to being bored or having to sit for longer periods of time. It was a normal thing back then. Whereas kids these days are growing up with technology that is giving them instant feedback. Instant feedback. And some kids are exposed to technology from, I don't know, a couple of months old. Like, I see some really young kids with phones and they know how to use them better than some adults. Like, that is the world that we live in, right? And so, what happens when you are a child and you are exposed to constant gratification, constant instant gratification? You click a button, it does what you want it to do. You scroll, it scrolls automatically. You play a game where you win something and you collect coins and it tick tick tick, like a poker machine, right? Like, go into the pokies and it's like pew pew pew, all these sounds, exciting, flashing, woohoo, like it keeps you engaged. And so that's what technology does for our kids, right? And so you then send them to school. Now, people who say that you send kids to school and you expect them to sit down for 6 hours in the day, like, can I tell you that is not the case? Like, teachers these days are getting really creative, myself included when I was teaching, trying to make learning fun, interactive, get outdoors, all those kinds of things. So it is uncommon that teachers are expecting kids to sit for 6 hours a day. Now, there probably are people who are doing that, potentially, yes. But there are also people who are trying to manage the level of activity and things as well. Okay, so both things can exist at the same time. But what we're doing is we're bringing kids into the education system, and they are a different cohort of kids. They learn differently, they do things differently. They typically can't sit still, and that's not their fault. That is not their fault. That is just the generation that's coming through. That's just what they're exposed to. And so what happens is that we have kids coming through with a higher level of need in terms of differentiation. Okay. Now, whose responsibility is it to be able to cater to these kids? It's the teachers. And so when you're someone who is running a class of anywhere from 18 up to 35, some classes even 40 students, and it is your responsibility to engage all of those students, make the lesson engaging and fun, make sure you track them, assess them as you go, make sure you're asking the right amount of questions, make sure you are incorporating physical activity, make sure you are doing this and this and this and this, all the policy and everything that you have to follow. One person is responsible for doing that. Now, you can get creative. Absolutely. There are ways to get creative to do it. But I just felt like generations coming through have all of these changes and requirements to suit their style of learning and needs for the generation that they are, with the technology and the things that they have access to. And it's been put on teachers to figure it out. Now, I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. I have thought in my mind about, okay, do we change the school day times? Do we, I don't know, bring more teachers in? I don't know. Honestly, I haven't thought about it enough, but I just think that not enough is being done to make change. There was a turning point for me that I really realized that this was the case, that things weren't going to change. And it was at a leadership conference that I went to. And at the leadership conference, we had keynote speakers, so speakers who would talk about all different things. And one of them focused on other countries' education systems. And I remember this one detail, and I will never forget it. We looked at the comparison between the education here in Australia and the results that our students produce in, standardized testings and things like that. And we compared it to countries overseas who were outperforming us by a mile. So countries like Sweden, Iceland, like those types of education systems, okay? The main difference between schools overseas that outperform us, that have healthy kids, the mental health statistics, compared to us, all those kinds of things. They go to school for half the duration that our kids do. So they spend 2 to 3 hours a day at school. And most of what these kids are doing is not inside a classroom, it's outside. And this statistic and this understanding has been around for a very long time. It's not new news. It's not new news. So when I'm sitting in this conference and I'm listening to them talking, I'm sitting there going, well, why haven't we changed anything? How is it that we have this information, we have this knowledge, we can see that our kids are struggling, especially since COVID, mental health, holy dooly, since COVID, alarming, very alarming, and we're not doing anything. We're not doing anything. We're just saying to teachers, differentiate your lessons, bring in more resources, get creative, find ways to make it fun, create an IEP, individual education plan, if you're not sure what that is, have meetings with parents, implement individual plans for them to go and have time for whatever they like. Do this, teachers, do this, teachers. Meanwhile, the policymakers and the ones who have the power are not making changes, knowing full well that education systems that are thriving, with kids that are thriving, are going to school for half of the time. Now, the only thing that I can think of in terms of unpacking this in a logistical sense is there is obviously ripple effect, right? If we all of a sudden turn around and go, okay, we're shortening the school day, we're now going from 9 till 12, the implications that come with that, I couldn't even fathom. I get it that there would be issues in the economy, people working, all those kinds of things. But if nothing's going to change, then why do I want to hang around? If nothing's going to change, then why do I want to hang around? And it honestly got to a point where I was sitting there in that leadership conference. And honestly, that was a pivotal moment for me, realizing that everything is so much bigger than little old me in my leadership team in my school. So much bigger than me. And there's politics. There's politics behind it. And if I wanted to be someone who made changes or impacted a positive change in the space, I wasn't going to do it from my middle leadership position, and I certainly wasn't going to do it from a principal position. Did I have any interest in moving my way up the chain to change policy in government schools to make significant change for our kids, for our teachers? I'd like to think that I'm optimistic, but I just don't think it's going to happen. And this is why it's controversial, because you might think schools are set up great or whatever your opinion is might be different to mine. But this was all why I wanted to leave. This was all a huge part of what I discovered in leadership. So kind of brings me to the third reason. With all of the politics involved, the third reason that I left was that there's a lot of policy and there's a lot of red tape and there's a lot around having to do things a certain way, basically so you don't piss people off. Now, I did a really good job at that for a long time. And what I mean by that is I was very good at appeasing people, parents in particular, but I was good at appeasing people. I was good at being professional, speaking in a way that was eloquent and professional and what's the word? Can't think of it. Politically correct. All those things. But what I was finding was that because Dylan and I were in this space of we want out, we don't want to be a part of the grind anymore, I started to realize that I was just becoming a puppet in a system that I didn't agree with. Being politically correct, saying what I should be saying, not speaking my mind. And I'm not saying I wanted to go and tell people where to go, but I mean, sometimes we just had no power. We had no power as teachers. We had no power as leaders in the space. And when it came down to policy, when it came down to all of the things that we needed to do, there was just too much in the way. There was too much in the way, and there was no common sense. There was no common sense. So, to dive into this a little bit more, I think the best way to put it out there when I mean policy and red tape and things is that when you work in schools, schools are, let's say they're graded. To make it really simple, schools are graded. You've got people who will come in, look at your school, look at your policies, look at how you do things, and they will grade you. They'll basically grade you on a scale. And to make it nice and simple, you can be graded as like a pass all the way up to like a high distinction. Let's just put it in terms that make the most sense for people. And basically, every avenue of a school was graded, down to your behavior policy, down to how your office systems ran, down to your budgeting, down to your lesson plans for each individual stage, for every curriculum area, for assessments. Everything was graded. Now, not just the day-to-day operations in the school, but the things that we were doing to bring in the community, the things that we were doing to build relationships, the things that we were doing to, engage other services. Like everything had a ticker box. And you were always striving in your school improvement plan, we used to call it the SIP, you were always striving to be at the next level, right? And so when you put teachers and you put educators in a room and you give them a rubric and you're like, hey, here's the standard of excellence. And to get that standard of excellence within every avenue, you then need to put more on teachers. You need to put more work, more things to do on people who are already doing too much of an expectation, too much pressure already to teach a class of kids. But now on top of that, they now need to do all these extracurricular things. And it was just too much. It was too much. It was like we were always working towards this next level. It was never good enough. We always needed to keep pushing. We always needed to improve. We always needed to be doing things. And the work just always fell back on teachers. And I just honestly got to a point where when it came down to the hours I was working, the burnout that I felt in a system that I didn't feel like could change, and policies and procedures that I constantly had to adhere to add more to my workload, I couldn't cope. I honestly couldn't cope anymore. Yeah. And it's crazy, like reflecting back on the main reasons as to why I left, because this is the case for a lot of people. And this isn't just in teaching, like this is people in a lot of professions. Absolutely, I can imagine that there are people resonating with this in some capacity, whether it's, certain parts of whatever I'm talking about is you're feeling the same in your place of work. Now, what I really want to touch on is when I think about those feelings, when I think about why I left, and I really unpack those three things, I do have a different way of looking at it now as to when I did that. So back then, I really was in a victim mentality. I was really in a mentality of I'm burnt out. Everything's too hard. It feels like too big of a job to try to make change and impact. There's too many policies. Leadership and above them, they're not doing anything. And I really was just victim. Everything's happening to me. And back then, I didn't realize it. I really didn't realize it. But a lot of what I was feeling, I had put on myself. No one told me I had to do 60, 70 hours of work a week. I had the capacity to do the hours that I wanted to do. I could prioritize things. I could change the way that I was viewing the work that I had to do. I could say no to more things. I was a yes man. Oh my. I was a yes man all the time. People pleaser. Yes, yes, yes. I'll do it. So I need to take some accountability for that. I need to take some responsibility for that. Now, Had I have not done the career change that I've done now and learned the skills that I've learned and been surrounded by the people that I am surrounded by, I don't think I ever would have come to this realization that I was in that victim mindset, because I thought about it differently then, and I've had a real mindset and perspective shift moving into this industry. Now, if I had the mindset that I had now and I was still teaching, I want to offer some words of advice or tips. Okay. When I say that I was in victim mindset and in that victim mentality of everything's happening to me, if you're listening to this right now and there's parts of you that thinks maybe you're the same in some way, shape, or form, I want you to just think and take a step back. Because you might be listening to this and this isn't about listen to this and do a career change and go off script. No, this can also just help you with your current situation and where you're at now and learn the lessons that I've learned. But my advice would be, if you're in a situation that's not serving you, or you're burnt out, or you're feeling a certain way, take a step back, zoom out. What is actually going on? What is in your control and what is out of your control? Because what I look back on now is that I was so focused on everything that I could not control. I'll say that again. I was so focused on everything that I could not control, and I allowed it to get me down. I allowed it to impact me. I allowed it to impact the decision making in terms of how much work I would do, how much effort I would put into things, what I would do outside of work, all of those things. And so if you zoom out, maybe think of one thing that you could change in terms of your perception. So maybe you're really focused right now on something that's out of your control in terms of the workplace, whatever that is. Think of something. Okay, now think of something that you can control. When you think about what you can control, there's a lot. It's the actions that you take. It's the way you choose to respond. And so a prime example of this, if I was talking to myself maybe 2 years ago when I was in the thick of it, you know what, probably even a year and a half ago when I was in the thick of just hating everything, I would honestly say to myself, Em, you are doing all of these things because you think that that is the expectation. You think that that is what people are expecting of you. But the reality is they don't expect that. You're putting that on yourself. And when you put that on yourself, you do more work, you put more weight on your shoulders, you put more pressure on your shoulders. No wonder you feel the way that you do. So I would say to myself, shut your laptop on a weekend. It's the weekend. If things can't get done, they can't get done. Too bad. It's the weekend. Shut off your laptop. No more getting up at 4 a.m. and getting home at 8 o'clock. That is ridiculous. Again, 4 o'clock, shut the laptop, go home. Now, what I would say is that if you feel like you need to be doing some of those things outside of school, you feel like the workload is getting bigger, prioritize. Say no to some things. Say no to someone asking you to help them out. Another big one. This used to irk me. I used to do it all the time when I was teaching in the beginning. And then I realized coming into the end of my career that I needed to make a change, and I did start making a change. But if you are someone who spends a lot of time talking with your colleagues more than necessary, it is time to cut back on those conversations. So something that I was really guilty of is I used to, at the end of the day, the bell would go, I'd run into my teacher bestie and we would sit and we'd have a yarn for an hour and a half. Did we get anything done? No. Did we whinge about the day? Yes. You don't need an hour and a half to whinge about the day. Now, 5 minutes, go for it. Quick debrief, this is what happened, blah, then go and get back to work. Go and do something. The amount of time that I saw myself wasting having really long conversations with colleagues, I look back now and I wish someone had told me sooner, Emma, use your time better. Because that is a big thing. And I know there's a lot of teachers out there who do that. And I can say this because I was one of them. Now, don't get me wrong. you do need to have conversations with your colleagues and build rapport and have those connections and relationships. Absolutely. But no longer than 5 or 10 minutes in the afternoon. If you need to, ring them on your way home when you're driving. But that time at school, you can use for other things. So that's what I should have been doing, and I should have been doing it sooner. So those are the kinds of things that you can control. You can control what you do during the time that you've allocated to tasks. You do have the control to be able to close your laptop on the weekend and then do your best on the Monday when you get started, when you're there. Like, all of those things were possible. So the reason that I wanted to share that is because I know that if you're listening, you might be someone who's going through a career change. You might be someone someone who's in a job or a situation that you don't like. Whatever it is, maybe this is a good reminder for you to just zoom out, have a look at the situation that you're in. Is there a possibility that you're being a bit of a victim? Can you focus on something that you can control and take action to get yourself out of that? Now, talking about this today is actually really timely because the last couple of weeks I have been in my head. Now, I'm someone who is a self-talker. I'm an overthinker. I am happy to put that out there. I'm a self-talker. I'm an overthinker. I think really deeply about things, like to the point that I have a voice in my head constantly talking. Like, it's my voice just constantly talking, analyzing things. I'm a million miles an hour. Now, what I didn't realize is that there are people in this world who have zero head talk or head noise. Dylan, my other half, that's him. Like, he's blank. Like, sometimes I'll say to him, "What are you thinking about?" We're driving. "What are you thinking about?" The road. Really? Like, I'm sitting there thinking about 3 different songs, what I had for breakfast, what I'm doing tomorrow, and a new business idea. Like, that, that is my mind. Like, insane. But my point that I was getting to is that the last couple of weeks, I've been in my head. I've been a little bit down, and I've actually been putting off filming the podcast, filming episodes, all those kinds of things. And I went into Chatty G yesterday. Now, if you're not using ChatGPT, it's kind of like my personal therapist. I basically brain dumped into ChatGPT and I was like, "Hey, tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear." And can I tell you, Chatty G bitch slapped me. Oh my goodness. Like, if you ever need a reality check, brain dump and then be like, what do I need to hear? Because usually Chatty G is like, "Oh, Emma, great thinking, good way of thinking. You're really thorough in your approach. Amazing that you came to that realization. Blah blah blah." Like, all these things, like praise, smoke up my ass all the time. And the last couple of weeks, I've been down. I've been frustrated. I have been in my head. And Chatty G last night gave me a reality check. So the reason I'm telling you this is because maybe you need a reality check. Maybe this episode is something that you're listening going, "I'm unhappy in my situation. Maybe I'm being a victim. Maybe I need to make a change." Who knows? So, episode 3. Oh, episode 3 is going to be about the career change. Okay, about the career change. What the heck have I been doing for the last year? Where did I start? Where am I now? It's a juicy one because a lot has changed. So I will see you in episode 3.